Well guys, it's that time of year again and it's time to review all the old coin finds I've made this year. And we'll start off with the silver coins, which consists of 47 silver coins this year, in comparison to the 409 coins in total I found this year, the old coins. And we'll look at the silver coins, and we'll look at first at the half crowns, and the oldest one I found this year was an 1817 bullhead half crown, type 2, which had just the neck and bull head, and that was found on the 19th of August. Slightly earlier, on the 22nd of June, I found my first ever half crown, sterling silver, dated 1899, the old head Queen Victoria, which I filmed the wash up on. I was shocked to find that. That was during my exams, so that was a great relief to come out and find that right off the bat as well. And the final half crown I found this year, we found on the 23rd of August. It's my first ever 50% silver, and it's George V. It's a type 3, so it has a shield on the reverse. Then we have the Gothic florin, very very nice coin indeed, a good fine grade in any numismatist's book. It has a nice street value, but it's the sentimental value of finding it, especially when it was right next to the type 2 George III bullhead, which I filmed the pull out of. And that led me on from this signal. Then we have the last silver I found of the year, which is this semi-key date 1930 50% silver George V florin, in very very nice condition indeed. There are some service scratches, but they're minimal, and it's in superb condition as you've seen in my last video. Then we have the two 50% silver florins that I pulled out on live dig that were in the same hole together on the 9th of August. And then I have my first hammered silver shilling, dated 1636-39, of Charles I, found on the 30th of November, sterling silver, and it's very very worn indeed, and you can just about make out his head, as you can see there, but it has been in the water for over 300 years, so it's very very worn, as you would expect. Then we have my first bullhead shilling, found on the 28th of July, dated 1816, in very very nice condition indeed. I filmed the wash up of that, and I was shocked to have found it so shallow, about 3 inches. I originally thought it was a 10p piece, but I thought, hang on, 10p pieces don't come up so high on the coin scale, as it were, and not shiny as well, so I knew this was silver. Then we have the final silver coin from that 4 coin pocket spill on the 19th of August that I filmed live. It's an 1844 shilling, slightly worn, but it's a beautiful beautiful coin to have found. I remember knocking the dirt away and seeing the edge of that and just knowing that I found 3 silver coins in the same hole, or in the same area rather. Then I have this was my first ever shilling, found back in March, and my 3rd silver coin of the year, can you believe, at the end of March, sterling silver, very very nice coin indeed, and it's also a semi-key coin of the series from 1911 to 1919. Then we have this George V 50% silver shilling that I found on the 3rd of December in the molehill, as you remember. And then we move on to the sixpences, and the first is this the last hammered coin I found of the year, and this very very nice Queen Elizabeth I 1573 love token hammered sixpence. Absolutely beautiful coin, no clipping whatsoever, just bent, but very very nice coin indeed. And then we have my first hammered coin ever, as you can see there, James the First clipped sixpence, found on the 16th of November, 1604 is the date, and you can just about see the VI Roman numerals for 6 behind his head there if I keep the camera steady. And then we have the Charles II 1674 to 84 sixpence, which is quite a scarce coin on its own, and that was found in the same field as the 1604, so I might go back there in a couple of years, or next year as the case may be, to see if I can find any deeper older silver that I missed with the original machine. And then we move on to the more common sixpences of that early milled era, which is the William III. Now these tend to get very very worn indeed, as is the case with this one, and I can't really date it more accurately than 1695 to 1701, but you can just about see a date. You can just about see the beginning of the legend and the bottom of his neck there, You'll have to trust me on this because the camera won't even focus on that, even though it's very, very worn. That's the sort of date it's looking at. And this one is even worse, but this will be of a similar date. This is the one that I filmed on the pullout and was questioning whether it was aluminium or not, but it's definitely silver. It rings true like silver, and it'll probably be of a similar date as well. Then we move on to the milled sixpences. Sterling silver 1875 with the die number 75. This was the second silver coin that I ever found, and the one I pulled out and I showed the edge of way back in one of the original episodes back in February. Then I found this 1889 Hold Jubilee Head sixpence, which I probably wouldn't have found at the site unless it hadn't been charmed like that, because the site dated from 1900 onwards, so this coin probably wouldn't have ended up there. So I'm glad I found it, even if it does have the hole in. Then I found my first Edwardian, Edward VII silver coin, sterling silver sixpence, dated 1907, and in a very, very nice grade. I used that on the tutorial of how to ultrasonic clean coins. Very, very nice coin indeed. Then we move up to further sixpences, and the first silver coin I ever found was this 1914 sixpence, found in a pocket spill with a 1918 penny, sterling silver, and I failed to get that on camera, but I filmed the wash up. And then another 1914 on the 17th of August, sterling silver again, and a 1915 that was found on the same day as the Danish King Christian VII, 2.5 shilling, which is a very nice coin. And my first 50% silver coin ever was this 1922 sixpence, found just off the track of farmers' fields. Wasn't expecting it. It was a superb coin, second silver of that month after a very long drought between February and March. I found 2 silvers on April Fool's Day, 1st of April and the 3rd of April. Then we move on to this, another 1922, 10th of October I found this. Sadly the camera deleted the file which filmed this being found, but it's another sixpence that was found in the same field as the hammered 1604 sixpence. Then we have this another 1925 found on the 11th of April. That was found on my first 3 silver coin day. Then another 1925 was found at the same site, same date, 50% silver on the 8th of August. Then there was another one on the 11th of April, dated 1930. And we move down to the 22nd of August, where I found another 1930 silver sixpence. Then we move back to the 11th of April for the 1933 50% silver sixpence, which was basically on the surface and very, very nice grade indeed. And it was right next to a shotgun shell, so it was giving my detector strange signals. And then we moved to a 1935, which came out of the hole with an iron nail. And a key date, George the 6th, 1938, sixpence found on the 30th of September, ensuring that I had silver every month of that year. And we move further down to a 1939, found on the 1st of May in a pocket spill with £2 coins. Obviously not dropped at the same time, but they were found in the same hole, and I thought that was quite interesting. And another 1939 on the 10th of August. And another 1939 that I filmed recently on the camera, found at the same spot as the Elizabeth I sixpence, but this side inside the property rather than the outer walls. Then there's this 1941 that I found in the same field as the 1604 hammered sixpence, beautiful condition but slightly scarred. Then we move on to the 1943, which I found on the 5th of August at the prolific silver site, as the case with the 1944 sixpence at the same site, the 1945 at the same site, and this one was found on the opposite field to the prolific site, but it's another silver from that site, ensuring that there was over 20 in total from the site, which is phenomenal. Then we move on to the only Maundy fourpence I found, which was this superb Hold 1763 Maundy fourpence with the RBX error rather than the REX, Rex for King. It's RBX, but it's been Hold sadly, but I found that during the night when I was coming back in. I just discovered that. Beautiful, beautiful coin dropped by a trader at some point during the 18th century. Then we find the April Fool's silver, 1762 threepence in absolutely superb condition. As you can see there, beautiful, beautiful coin. If you pardon the hair, there you are. Then we move on to the only two milled threepences I've ever found, which were stuck together sadly and so are very, very corroded. But both George V, 1916 and 1918. And then we move on to the cartwheel pennies. In total, the pennies I've found this year equate to 116, with 5 cartwheel pennies. This is the last one I found of the year. That was 8 inches down, but the first one I found up here on the 2nd of April is in superb condition. As you can see here, very, very nice condition indeed. Not dropped at all on the stone floors and therefore not denting the edges. But and then an array of slightly lower grade cartwheel pennies, as you can see here. And then we move on to the slightly later issue, 1806, 1807, 2 of them, copper pennies, and then we move on to the bronzes. So I found no copper of Victoria in the large denomination, only farthings. And we move from Victorian pennies 1860, 1860, 1860, and then we move to 1861, 62, 62, 62, 62, but there's some standout ones in this group, like this one that was found in the pocket spill in absolutely superb grade, but they're all very worn, 1863, 63, generally very worn or poor condition. But all that 1866, 67, 67, 70, 72 rather, and then we move on to the later Victorias, 73, 75, 76, both heat and mint, 76, 76, 79 and 89 that's been dented, and 1891 in very nice condition, worn but very nice condition, no edge chipping, and then 1895, 1896, 97, 97, and then 1901s, 3 of them in very, very nice condition, and the third one is down further south. But then we move on to the Edward coins, a few nice Edwardian pennies, I think 5 this year, or 6 this year, dating from 1903, like this one here, right up to the 1910 here. Then we move on to the George V, and I found a lot of George V this year, over these taken 20, these batches I found, or the 2 there, there's 20 in this column, 20 here, so 42 at least. Then we move up here and they're still going into the later dates, and they eventually stop here. So there's in total 48 George V pennies in the meagre collection of George VI, 1937, 38s, 44, 45, 46, 46, down here, 47, 47, 48s, and 49s, and then we move on to the 63s, 63s and 64s of pennies. And here are the most recent pennies that I've found that I haven't been able to put into the thing before I did the filming. And then we move on to the oldest copper coinage I found, which includes this William III copper halfpenny from 1695 to 99. Dump issue George I halfpenny, more George I coinage, and then we move on to George II coinage, young and old head, in a love token form, that one. Beautiful coinage all the same, and that one has been holed, but that was found on farm fields. More old head coinage, and then we move on to George III, 1799 coinage. Further 1799 coinage, and then 1806 coinage, which rejoins up down here, and we get a whole page of 1806, 1807 with a star find here, very nice 1807, and then we have some later ones and an unusual 1811 Essex halfpenny that was found in the same holes in 1806, pressed together very tightly if you remember. And the final ones down here, we move on to milled copper. Is this 1826 George IV halfpenny. I found a second one of them, but it was in very poor condition, so I put it somewhere else. Then we move on to the Victorian bronze halfpennies, which are again shown here, which have been found in the woods, going through, and some very nice examples in there. But a very nice collection of coins. There's another example. Here is my first ever coin spill. It was 3 of them, my first ever coin. So in fact, 1896 and 2 1917 halfpennies pressed together tight, and you can see the original colour there. Beautiful coins. There's an 1896 that's got a hole in it. And further beautiful halfpennies. Edwardian halfpennies next. Most common of the Edwardian coinage I found, with some very exquisite examples, as you can see here. Especially ones like that. And then we move on to the more Edwardian, and then Georgian. And George V again occupies a lot of room on here, following back to 1917, the early teens, and then further on into the 20s. And there you can see the 2 coins that were pressed together with the 1896 halfpennies. You can see the corrosion on them, but they still have the original colour. And you have the further examples, and then further coins up here of George V. And then we have George VI coinage, which has a far more than the pennies variety, dating from 1937 I believe. It goes all the way through to the very, very late ones, which I've included at the end. And there's some Elizabethan, but some of the beautiful George VI coinage I've included at the end there, which I haven't had time to put in. But there again are some of the other halfpennies, including the beautiful George II found in the Molehill, that haven't been put in the cases yet. Then we move on to the farthings. My oldest farthing is 1673 Charles II found in the woods. On camera, a William and Mary. You could just about see Guilliamus for William in Latin. 1694 on the date on that one. One George I farthing, you can see there very clearly, found at the prolific silver field of George II, and another George II, both dated 1746. Further George II, dated 1746, common year. George III with a hole. There's another George III, very sharp, that's the laureate head. Then we move on to the bear head, 1826, and a further 1826. Then we move on to the only William IV coin I've ever found. William IV, 1830 to 37 farthing. I believe it even cuts down to 31 to 37. Then we have one of the Victoria farthings I found, 1840s and date. And a second one I found. And the last one I found most recently from the Roman field is there. But we have another Victorian bronze, 1861. And then further later ones that were found at the campsite with the silver sixpences. Later bronzes, 1894, and areas like that. Right back up to the top, we have a 1902, my first Edward coin, and then Georgian farthings. Further Georgian, some beautiful examples. And then we move on to the 1939. There we are, it's 1942 and the 1939 in beautiful condition, perfect bronze, and the 1942 found very near to it. And then we have a very corroded 1944 and 1946's farthings. Then we move on to the foreign coins. Now the Irish coinage right up at the top here is built to the specifications, or made to the specifications of the English coinage. So these ones are the Irish coin, 1769 is the halfpenny date on these. Then we have the 1805 Irish, which has been attacked for some reason. and a bronze penny of George V, Irish, 1933, and a 1948 Irish bronze penny, and a 1933 Irish farthing. Very nice coin indeed. Final coin I included in the foreign was this bailiwick of Jersey, 1992, 10 pence. I just like to keep them. Then we move on to the only American silver I found this year, a beautiful mercury dime dated 1936 from Denver. That was found at 6 inches down in a field that had the wheat scent, which I found before it in 1942. Very corroded, but 1942 wheat scent. I'm very happy with these two finds. I actually dreamed of finding American coinage because I originally watched the American videos, which is what got me started into this hobby, and I proved that by finding some in return. Then we have in 1986 American Clad quarter and a 1986 Lincoln Zinken penny. Then we have two French Napoleon III 10 centime pieces dated 1853 and 1854 respectively. One was minted in Lille and the other in Bordeaux. I imagine I have been told that the 1854 with the K mint for Bordeaux is the rarest mint of that year. So that's quite an interesting find. That was found in the Horsfield along with the 1604 hammered sixpence. And there is a 10 centime more common, and it's newer, 1986, found near a bin. Then we have the only Nazi coin I've ever found, 1942. Luckily you can't see the swastika on there, but it is there, so it won't be banned in Germany, but it is there. It's a 10 Pfennig piece from 1942, minted in Berlin. Obviously a soldier came back from the war with that as a token and lost it. Then we have the Danish King Christian VII, 1787, 2.5 shilling, 375 silver, purity. And the 5 Kreutzer I found from Austria, 1859, Franz Joseph. It's very, very poor condition. And the Austrian 1 shilling that I found that's been attacked by a lawnmower right next to a road. And now I'll move on to the Clad finds this year, which equates to £110 and 8 pence British sterling. The biggest one here is the £5 note you see in front of you. I found that after the fireworks display on the 5th of November, and as you can see there's mud all over it where someone trampled it in, but I washed it up and it's ready to be recirculated. Moving on to the coins, we have 4 of the £2 coins, the largest coin we have in British circulation. The pound coins you see here in stacks of 5 equate to £76 coins, which is very useful. The 50p's, 6 of them. We have 51 20p's, which equates to £10.20 obviously, and 27 of the 10 pence, the smaller ones from 1992 and onwards. The 5p's equate to 38 of them. The 2p's, the copper ones I have at the top here, there are 86 of the copper ones. I'll skip the iron bit in the middle there, and as you can see there are 121 of the copper pennies in stacks of 10 on both of the 2p and penny. The iron ones in the middle you see here, there are 12 pennies, and you can see the difference between the way iron reacts to the ground. It looks horrible, utterly horrible, compared to the copper ones you see. And again with the copper pennies, this is the ironclad coinage. This is what our coinage has become, and this is basically after 5 years in the ground. It looks horrible. But I'll be able to circulate these ones. I doubt I'll be able to circulate the ones that are buckled, but again I have 12 of the iron ones, and I believe 11 of the penny iron ones. And as you can just see on the corner of your screen here, there are some of the lawnmower damaged ones. I haven't added these to the totals because obviously I can't recirculate them, but there are 3 of the copper 2p's of the new pence variety, so pre-1982. They've been buckled by lawnmowers, as I said, and one of the iron ones that has been battered around a bit. They'll obviously never see circulation again because of problems like that to the edge. And then the final one we have here is a cut penny half of a copper penny. And at the bottom here you see two of the modern European coins that happen to get into Britain and get lost in the ground. The final ones, which I can't really call coins that I found metal detecting, because I haven't. These have just been acquired when I went on my holiday in the summer to the US. So these coins have been acquired just by beachcombing, basically. And as you can see here, there are 27 Zincans, zinc cents post 1982, 10 of the copper ones. Then we have 2 nickels, 10 cents, 3 dimes, 30 cents, and 5 quarters. Interestingly, the one you see there, the 1974, just got out of Los Angeles airport, was walking across the crosswalk and kicked that and heard it and picked it up. But I've also found British coinage, just not even on my travels metal detecting, but just in everyday life. You see a £1 coin there that's been battered around on the road, 2 10-pence pieces. The one on the right is quite odd, it's stained for some reason, the 5-pence piece. But these are all the coins I've acquired, and there are 50 of the coins that haven't been metal detected, they've just been on the surface. Whereas for the copper coins I found detecting, it equates to 433 spendable coins. I'll keep the copper ones, but the spendable coins, excluding the 5 cut ones here and the 2 there as well. So that's a very good haul for the Clad coinage this year. And I'll move on to the jewellery. Well guys, as promised, here is the jewellery I found this year. To start with, it's the sterling silver chain that runs around the outside of them. It's it dates from about 1890 onwards. It weighs 19.1 grams, and each individual link, as you can see there, is sterling hallmarked. That specific date mark there is of the maker itself, but every other link has the sterling mark, as you can see there. Beautiful 19.1 grams sterling silver chain, probably a watch chain, but as I said before, it had iron attached to the end of it, so it could have been something else. And it's very, very worn as well, so it was probably dropped a lot later than its original date of about 1890. Then we have the first piece of silver jewellery I ever found, was this beautiful Emily brooch. Its date is 1894. Judging by the hallmarks on the reverse, you can see just at the top, if it's in a focus, there, you can see them just there. It's a bit smashed, so the date letter is a bit, well, is a bit smashed up, but it dates from about 1890, so I doubt I'll find the owner again to return it. But it's either a hair clip or a brooch to go on the lapel. But it's about 1894 on the date. Then we have 2 silver rings. Sterling mark is upside down. Just by my nail there, you can see 925. Yin Yang ring. It's quite a modern ring. Not that old at all, but it's broken, as I say, at the top. And the other sterling silver ring I found was at the prolific site that gave me the Gothic florin bullhead half crown, 1844 shilling, 1862 penny drop. It is marked just on the back of the ring there. You can just about see it there. 925 there. Very thin ring, but it is silver, so that's a fantastic find. And the one and only gold ring I found was way back in February on episode 6, entitled Two's Company. I found this beautiful hallmarked Hens and Moritz 1925 9-carat gold ring. So found after 2 months of detecting. I found my first gold ring ever and my only piece of gold jewellery so far. Absolutely superb find. But it was resized at one point, as you can see there. But that's my only piece of gold jewellery ever, and it's a fantastic start to get 4 pieces of sterling silver and a beautiful gold ring onto the tokens. Well guys, as promised, here are the tokens. Let's start with the most recent, which is this very, very nice Liverpool halfpenny token, dated 1791. And it's unusual in the sense that the person who made it dated the edge with his own name. It's one of a variety of Liverpool half tokens. This one has the ship on the reverse, as you saw earlier. Beautiful ship, and it's lasted over 200 years in the ground for copper, which is exceptional. Then we have what I cannot identify as anything more than what I would have thought to be play money. It looks to me, almost the shields on the reverse look like a George V florin, but it's degrading and falling apart, so I'd probably think it was made out of tin or something cheap. And it's very small and has a hole in it, so I've listed it as a token, but I don't actually know what it is. So if anyone is able to identify some design from what I understand is very little on there, then that would be greatly appreciated. Then we move on to this, which is probably the greatest heartbreaker of the year. It is a Queen Victoria Prince of Wales half sovereign model. It's a Prince of Wales model half sovereign, as you can see there, and the heartbreaker is it came up like a perfect half sovereign. The signal was exactly the same as the gold one, but having said that, it's in beautiful condition. Very, very nice coin, and it's token rather, and it's I understand relatively scarce, but it's nice to find one anyway. Then we move on to the 2 guineas that I found very soon afterwards. This one is actually an advertising token from the Victorian period of a mock-up of a actual spade guinea like that one. It's from the 1880s, I've been led to believe, and it's of the Waverley Vale, the Pickwick Owl and the Hindu Pens, which was a slogan for selling pens of all things, but it has the name of the person around the outside. As you can see there, it's in very good condition, but that dates from the 1880s, but in the style of the 1770s and onwards spade guineas that they used to gamble with. Then we move on to the actual spade guinea I found, which you can see there. It's dated 1790. You can just see that in the corner there. It has incorrect legends, and obviously so they avoided treason and the death penalty, but you can just about see his name inside there very clearly, and inside there somewhere is the bust of George III, probably pretty crude, but it's been bent over, and I'll leave it as it is. But it's an interesting artifact, which when I first found I didn't know what it was, and then I started filming when I cleaned it up. Then we get on to this 3p PE token, pretty modern, about the 1940s I believe, or slightly later, that was found in the river. I don't know much more than that, but it's an interesting find. First thing I found when I went in the river was this, 2 inches in the soil. Then we get to the first token I ever found. This was 10 inches deep. This was very, very deep indeed, on medieval linchets, the ploughed burrows they made, furrows rather, and I believe it depicts the Lion and the Mouse story, one of Aesop's fables. And I believe the legend itself is actually in Latin, so it would probably be quite old. I don't know how old exactly, I haven't been able to find any similar tokens, but you can see on the back the lion seated here, his 2 paws, but I don't know how old that is, but it was very, very deep indeed, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was 16th or 17th century. The final one here is the Ironbridge Gorge 1987 farthing, which, as you know, the 1987 farthing was well after we introduced decimal coinage, but the only reason I guess this got into circulation is because it's actually a very similar size to pennies of the same period. It's bronze, definitely bronze, and it's a similar size to pennies because it was located with a modern 5p and a modern 20p, so I know that it was dropped post 1990, and it was probably circulating as a penny, which is quite an interesting story. And now I'll move on to the contemporary forgeries. As we see here, the last contemporary forgery I found was this 1818, I believe, or 1819, bullhead shilling forgery made of brass. and they got very good at these stage. This would have been silver plated, and it has got some weight to it, but it's still well underweight. But this would have been silver plated when it was circulating around, but obviously didn't fool someone because they either discarded it or it was lost pretty soon after it was struck, because it seems to be in pretty good condition under the stippling of the brass over time. But interestingly, it was quite near to this 3-shilling bank token of 1811 that has been beautifully carved out around to make as a medal, and someone's obviously lost it. So someone obviously realised that this was a fake, and it still interestingly has some of the silver plate on it. But someone obviously realised this was fake and said, I'll make it into something more interesting. So they got their money's worth, as it were, but they then went and lost it. So it's a very interesting find, and I'll just go back to the one I skipped, which is this obvious fake George III halfpenny. The reverse is, well, it's near indistinguishable, but it'll be 1770 to 1775, but they commonly dated them 1776 to avoid execution through treason. Then we have another one that's very worn. Could even be an 1806, an actual genuine one, but just by looking at it I thought it was pretty crude, the way the copper is splitting off the top, so I thought this is probably not an official mark, but the head does look 1806 like, so it could be an actual original. It just doesn't look very good. Then we move on to another contemporary forgery of a shilling. This one is a lot thinner, and they haven't even bothered to mill the edge on this one, so this is a very crude example. And I believe this dates to 1820, so this was someone who failed at their art very quickly, because this is incredibly lightweight. Came up like a nickel signal, and I thought at first it was a 10p, and then I thought, hang on a minute, this is ridiculously light. But it is an 1820 fake shilling. You can just about see his head there. Just as I was walking home I discovered it. Came up like tin foil, but that was barely 2 inches down. Very crude example, but 200-year-old artifact anyway, so it's very interesting. Then we move on to this one, which is very similar to Irish halfpennies of the same period, but if you look around the legend it says George's rules. If the camera off, you can just about see rules, and then on the back it says North Wales, and that was quite amusing because it has the Irish, the Harp of Erin on it, and the Maid of Erin there. You can just about make out the Maid of Erin as well, but it has the inscription George's Royals North Wales, so you know it's not real. It's got the Irish reverse, and it's got something to do with North Wales, so you know it's just a fake that's been made. And the final one, which isn't even a token or a coin, is one that I found way back in February. I was digging in the woods, and first thing I saw, I got a strong silver signal. I brushed away some dirt, and the first thing I saw was that. And as you can imagine, that is silver in anyone's book, but it turns out to be a washer. Now, why anyone would have milled an edge on a washer is beyond me, but it did catch me out, so I always have a laugh when I see this one. I kept it all the same, but it's obviously junk, but it keeps me smiling. Guys, as promised, here is the low-grade Jordan. There are 5 1806 halfpennies that are in very poor condition that I haven't put in the main collection but are still treasured. There's one out of container that was found recently, 1806 is the date on that one. Then we have 1 solitary George III farthing, which is in pretty poor condition, and 6 George II halfpennies that are in very poor condition and probably aren't worthy of putting in expensive kits, but I still treasure them anyway. Then we have a lot of undated coinage. This is all Georgian most likely, and there are 5 farthings or farthing sized objects and a further 10 or 11 copper halfpenny sized objects that could well be tokens, it could be anything, but they're so poor that you can't tell anything. And I'll now move on to the 3 Roman coins that I've found. As you can see here, I've put them all in containers because they're quite fragile. And the first one I ever found was this Maximinus II Dia, dated 310 to 313 AD, minted in Germany in Trier, the oldest German city and the German capital for the Roman provincial mint. Beautiful coin, and that was worth at the time approximately an eighth of a gold coin in comparison to modern coinage. And there is the barbarous radiate that I have recorded. It dates from 270 to 280 AD approximately, but the officials in Sphinx say that it's 270 to 273, so we could accurately date it there. But this was made locally around the area, as there was a shortage of coinage after the breakup of the Gallic Empire. I have been reading quite a lot on this, but very interesting coin. And I believe it's an Antoninus. That's quite a tongue twister. But it's a very, very small coin, 14 millimeters. And the final Roman coin I found, very soon after the Antonini, was this A3 bronze Constantine the Great, very, very poor condition. But it has the gate on the reverse with 3 turrets, as I remember. It dates from 307 to 337 AD. So there are my 3 Roman coins, 3 copper hammers. Fantastic find, found very, very short. 3 in 5 days, with 5 Roman artifacts in those 5 days, including the spoon, which I will now show you. There is that Roman spoon, a beautiful 3rd or 4th century AD beautiful spoon, very, very rare find, I've been assured. And it's such a sentimental artifact, which is so fascinating, because you can see there where it broke. It was originally regular bowl, as you can see, but it broke there and it's worn. So I imagine that the wear here prompted the bend here into something more interesting, a decorative piece, which it obviously was because of the silver and gold plate you can still see there. But it was obviously wasn't something that they wanted to lose, but it's a beautiful, beautiful sentimental object. Here are 2 oyster shells that are of Roman period, so some Roman 1700 years ago would have used his mouth to eat them whilst on his marching travels, and that's just a really special feeling to touch something that has such history behind it. Same as with this Roman roof tile that has the mistake in. You always imagine the Romans to be conquerors and powerful people, but even they made mistakes, such as this case here. And now I'll move on to the early decimal coinage, the most boring part, because you can't spend it, you can't do anything with it, but you do find it, but it's nice to have more coins. Here they are. Guys, as promised, here are the early decimal coins. There are 7 of the large 10p pieces, a lot of the copper half-pence pieces that were phased out during the 1980s. They were brought in only to really accept the sixpence, which was worth 2.5p under the new system, and these were used to accept them, and then they gradually were reduced when the sixpence was removed. Then we have 5 of the large 50p pieces, and the only notable one, apart from Britannia on the reverse, has the European hands from 1973. They had to change the design because 2 new nations joined before this was to be released. So it was changed from 7 to 9, as you can see there, from 1973, but they're all Britannia reverse apart from that one. And there are a further 15 or 16, I believe, of the shilling-sized 5p pieces. I believe you can exchange these at the bank, but examples such as these that have been in the woods are unlikely to be accepted, put it that way. But there are, I believe, 43 of the early decimal coins, so it's good to get more silver than the early decimal, because these are the ones that can't be spent and just sit around not being worth anything, unfortunately. But I think you can exchange them, and I hope you can exchange them, so I'll get some money back for them. But they're good finds all the same, and I'll move on to some of the relics. Guys, here are some of the artifacts I've been finding. I've simplified them down, as you'll be glad to hear, into these trade weights and bag seals. First off is this Charles I trade weight. It's a very, very nice trade weight. You can see the cipher of the C and the crown with the sword, and this dates it to Charles I's reign. Very, very heavy trade weight, found in the same field as that 1604 hammered sixpence. There's a lot of history in that field. It obviously goes back to Charles I and even further, James I. But also in that same field was this George III trade weight. So we know that there was at least trading going on for 150, 160 years, 1630s to 1790 at least, because this is George III. Beautiful trade weight brass. This is obviously someone with some money getting them professionally made. You can see the cipher of George III down there. Again with the sword, so I don't know what that signifies, as both contain a sword. This one has a letter of an A, which must mean something in comparison to other trade weights. And then there are these bag seals, of which all 5 are dated 1836, as you can see there. 1836, all dated like so, but some of them have this design, like this one, and this one. Others have, I believe others have, I think one of them has a slightly different design, which obviously denotes what's inside of the bag, because he sealed the bag, and they're all dated 1836. They obviously came from probably the same person, obviously trading during the 1830s, as well as the 1790s, 1800s, and as early as the 1630s. So it was obviously a very old trade route, or bypass for some activity, because you don't normally get trading weights in an area that doesn't have trading activity in it. Balls and old buckles like the medieval buckle there, and some various bits of metal, and this intriguing iron key, skeleton key, I would guess probably 1700s in date, but probably opens the house where I was going. And obviously the spoon is modern, but I find a lot of spoons. And there's interesting artefacts with designs on them that I need to get checked out down there, which that could even be medieval. But I find a lot of interesting artefacts out metal detecting. I obviously shoot for coins because of the history, and you can pretty much accurately date most coins, but it's the history behind it. And the interesting thing is, when I bought my metal detector for £105, the starter kit, the Ace 150, I have been able to discover £107.15, not including the copper coinage, which equates to £2.95 in face value, but a lot more, double in copper value. But this is when I exchanged it at the bank. It was all accepted, the iron stuff. So even before all of the interesting jewellery, other Clad coinage, foreign coinage, and all of the silver coins and history, I've still been able to profit from the adventures this year. But there is the side note that every time you do take a coin, such as the 1817 half crown, or there's something as minimal as a sixpence from 1940s, you're taking a coin out of the ground that will never be replaced, and I acknowledge that fully, and that's why I've taken the time to put them all in these card containers and all date them accurately when I found them, what date they are, what purity they are, and respect them to the extent that that is, because I know that the sentimental value to me is that I found every single one of these coins, but I just know that these coins are never going to go back into the ground, so I cherish them to the absolute fullest extent I can. And I do that right down to the more modern coins like the Elizabeth II pennies, something like that, and the cupronickel coins you saw earlier. But I cherish every single one of them because I know this is a piece of history, and of the area I live in. It's nice to have a nice documented record, and that's the way I show it. So I hope I haven't bored you too much watching this, but I'll leave you with a documented sheet of the breakdown of finds of the pennies and the half pennies, silver coins, sixpences and 50% and sterling silver. I hope you've enjoyed. I wish you a very happy new year, a very prosperous 2012, and obviously a safe one as well. So thank you for joining me this year, and I hope I can be as successful next year.